Hi, I'm Tasha from One Big Happy Life on behalf of the Financial Diet, and this is the Lifestyle Fix, brought to you by SKILLSHARE. Today, I'm taking on a whole new lifestyle topic that I haven't really focused on so far here on the Lifestyle Fix: having kids. Over on my channel, One Big Happy Life, just about everything that we talk about touches on managing life as a family, because the reality is that I'm a working mom with children, and that affects basically everything that I do. Deciding whether or not to have kids and when's the right time to have them is hugely personal. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing some of my personal experiences around having children, and in particular, focusing on what it's like having children when you're younger versus having them later in life after you're more established. So first, let me give you some quick background on my baby story so you have some context. I had my daughter Alexis when I was just 19 years old. I was a single teen mom, barely out of high school, and working full-time as an active duty Marine. After having my daughter, I made a decision not to have any more children until I was in a financially sound enough position to support them. So I went on birth control and stayed on birth control for 9 years as I went through undergrad and law school. And I was actually married for 8 out of those 9 years. Towards the end of law school, my then husband and I decided that we were ready to have children, so I went off of birth control. At that time, I was using a Mirena IUD, which is a form of localized hormonal birth control that stopped my period for years. It took almost a year for my cycle to return to normal, and by that time, my husband and I were in the middle of a divorce. I was 30 years old by the time I started trying to have a child with my partner, Joseph. After spending my whole life under this impression that getting pregnant was a foregone conclusion after having unprotected sex, I was surprised when a year had passed and we hadn't conceived. 3 years of trying and 1 miscarriage later, I gave birth to a 10-pound, 3-ounce healthy baby boy named Reeves. I was 33 years old and my children were born 14 years apart. So that's the backstory. Let's move on to the lessons, starting with the most obvious. Lesson 1, it is a lot easier to have a child when you have more money. When I got pregnant with my daughter, I was broke. I was making less than $20,000 a year, and I had nothing to my name but some clothing and a cassette radio with a CD player, which makes me feel really old now that I'm actually saying that out loud. Back then, I had to literally budget down to the penny and would often put just $5 worth of gas in my car because that's all that I could afford. Most of my daughter's clothing and furniture were bought secondhand. I'd walk through the nursery section in Babies R Us and I wished that I could buy one of those beautiful nursery sets, but I knew that I just couldn't afford it. So instead of buying decor, I hand painted a massive fairy forest mural with life-sized fairies and a tree that went up across the ceiling, which I painted to look like the sky, of course. Not being able to afford to buy whatever I wanted forced me to be resourceful, which is how my love for DIY was born. Still, my budget would only stretch so far, so I skipped non-essentials like a changing table. I changed my baby on the floor or on the bed, and I also didn't have a rocking chair. I walked and rocked her by hand. By the time I had Reeves, I was a lawyer making 6 figures and with a partner who also made 6 figures. Even though I had way more money, I was also a lot more thoughtful about how I spent my money. And things like buying a fancy nursery set just because of the high price tag just didn't appeal to me anymore. So while yes, I could have afforded to purchase a $1,000 crib from Pottery Barn, unlike with my first child, this time around I didn't want to. Instead, I bought a $100 crib from Amazon. I DIY'd almost everything in his room, including building his shelves, installing a wood plank ceiling, and even sewing the curtains. I opted to get a changing table and a glider for the nursery this time around, though. Even though I was thoughtful about how I spent my money, the fact is that I did spend more money. From the $8 a pop silicone bottles that minimize nipple confusion to buying an extra electric breast pump for the convenience of not having to schlep it back and forth to work. Those were luxuries that I just couldn't afford with my first child. Knowing that I had the financial resources to provide for my baby and to afford anything I wanted within reason just made the whole experience so much less stressful. I could focus on the joy of having my baby without all of the worries that I had when I was a teen mom. I was able to take 12 weeks of paid maternity leave at 33 years old versus just 6 weeks when I was 19, because I'm now in a position to select an employer that offers those benefits. And I was able to hire a nanny to care for my son in my own home, which was a lot easier to do than leaving my 6-week-old at daycare. Lesson number 2, pregnancy is harder on your body when you're older. I'm going to start this off by saying that I'm one of those women that absolutely loves being pregnant. Having said that, being pregnant as a teenager was so much easier than being pregnant in my 30s. When I was younger, I had a lot of energy, even up to the very last days of my pregnancy. Back then, I was really into this arcade game called Dance Dance Revolution. It's one of those games where you have to jump and hit the directional foot plates timed to the music, with your feet. I played that game at the arcade up until the day before I gave birth. Yes, 9 months pregnant. Meanwhile, 33-year-old me would crawl under my desk at work during lunchtime so I could get in a nap and actually survive the afternoon at work. When I would come home, I'd eat and go straight to bed at 7 p.m. Then I'd wake up at 6:30 a.m. the next morning and do it all over again. On the whole, my body was a whole lot achier, and just moving around in general felt so much harder. Lesson number 3, I felt more in control of my life and my pregnancy in my 30s. Although the pregnancy itself was more challenging in my 30s, when it came time to actually have the baby, my labor and delivery went a lot smoother and my recovery was much faster. I attribute that to a few things. First, it's possible that my labor was a little easier the second time around, though according to my midwife, a 14-year gap is like never having had a baby in the first place. But the main reason why I think my labor went smoother is because I was in a better headspace in my 30s than I was at 19. At 19, I was barely an adult myself. I didn't know much about the way the world works, and I also wasn't great at deciding what I wanted and advocating for myself. Those are skills that I've learned over time as I've gotten older. By the time I got pregnant with my second child in my 30s, I was used to doing my own research and finding the best options, doing what was necessary to make it happen. I was also better at properly preparing myself in advance, which helped me make more informed choices about what I wanted for my labor and delivery the second time around. It's also worth noting that part of what helped me be better prepared in my 30s was that I had already experienced giving birth at 19. My birth experience at 19 led me to want a natural birth in my 30s. I found practitioners that specialized in low intervention, all natural methods. I found a hospital that offered water births. I used hypnobabies to prepare myself mentally for the labor. Because of that, I was able to give birth naturally to a 10-pound baby with no tearing and was on my feet walking around within the first hour of giving birth, compared to my first delivery at 19, which included an epidural, third-degree tearing, stitches, and weeks of recovery. Lesson 4, it's a lot harder to keep up with a child when you're older. When I was 19, pulling all-nighters with an infant was nothing. I had no problem putting her to bed, staying up to work on my college courses, then having a few hours of sleep broken up by nighttime breastfeeding, only to wake up at 6 a.m. for work the next morning. I had no idea why I'd see all these articles about people complaining about being exhausted from caring for their babies. Fast forward to 33-year-old me and 30-year-old Joseph, and we were barely functioning within the first few days of bringing our baby home. Realizing that something had to change and fast, we started coming up with strategies to help us get more sleep. We started sleeping when the baby would sleep. That meant we were taking naps throughout the day so that we could actually function like normal people. Then, when Joseph went back to work, he started sleeping in a different room so that he could get enough rest. At some point, Reeves started sleeping through the night, which was great, but the moment he could walk, he started running and never stopped. Toddlers have an almost unlimited amount of energy. They're constantly running and jumping and yelling and climbing on you. 20-year-old me was here for all of that. 30-year-old me just wants to nap all the time. Lesson 5, I'm far more patient, laid back, and creative as a parent in my 30s. I had somewhat of a difficult childhood. My parents subscribed to the spare the rod and spoil the child philosophy, and I still carry the scars from their preferred form of discipline to this day. So from the moment I found out that I was pregnant with my first child, I knew I wanted to be a different kind of parent, but I didn't really know exactly what that was supposed to look like. So that means, like most parents, I spent a lot of time just figuring things out with my first kid. By the time I had another child, I'd had more time to learn techniques that would help me be a better parent, plus the real world experience of raising a child into the teen years. And of course, I had more time to unpack my own baggage from my childhood. Am I a perfect parent now that I'm in my 30s? Absolutely not. But I can say that I'm a better one than I was 17 years ago because I'm generally a more grounded, patient, and flexible parent than I was when I first started. And some of that is just from the maturity and mental and emotional stability that comes with getting older. Lesson number 6, I didn't have to give up on my dreams just because I had children. This was true when I was 19, and it's still true now. I think there's this common line of thinking out there that once you have kids, your life is over and all of your dreams just shrivel up and die. I don't know where that came from, but it's totally a myth. You can live a happy life and yes, follow your crazy dreams even if you have kids. It might take some creativity, but it's definitely doable. My daughter's been with me through community college and through undergrad. She's gone to law school classes with me at Yale, and she's gotten to experience living in different parts of the country. Amazing life experiences that I'm glad to have been able to share with her. And with Reeves, our youngest, even though we already have established careers, we've also started and grown a 6-figure business that likely will lead to us becoming self-employed within the next few years. Life doesn't have to stop being amazing just because you have kids, no matter how old you are. So now that I've dropped some real-life parenting lessons on you, let's talk about another way for you to learn some essential life skills, SKILLSHARE. SKILLSHARE is an online learning community with thousands of classes in design, business, technology, and more. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes on essential topics so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. Looking to learn some new skills so you can finally start that side hustle? Check out DKNG's class, Mastering Illustrator, 10 tips and tricks to speed up your workflow, where you'll learn the tricks of the trade that they use to tackle design projects quickly and efficiently in Illustrator. Click the link in the description box to join the millions of students already learning on Skillshare today and take advantage of a special offer just for TFD viewers. The first 500 visitors will get 2 months of unlimited access to over 25,000 classes for free. Act now so you don't miss out and start learning today. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and tune in here every single Friday for another new episode of The Lifestyle Fix. See you next week.